I have recently come to a hard realization. The concept of employment, the very foundation of how we feed our families, may soon become obsolete. Artificial general intelligence is arriving, and it poses a threat to shatter the world's economy as we know it. For me, the terrifying part isn't the technology itself. It's that the overwhelming majority of people appear to be sleeping through the alarm. By the time the world wakes up to this new reality, the doors of opportunity may already be locked. Now, I'm not a tech CEO or an economist. I'm just a bicycle mechanic with a YouTube channel. But that's just exactly the point. We may no longer need experts in the traditional sense when we have AI. Let that sink in. Artificial general intelligence represents what could be the single greatest transformation in human history. And we've only got one shot to get it right. For the sake of humanity, this is something we all need to understand better. That is exactly what I intend to do for myself, and I'm bringing you along. Allow me to explain. Part 1. The foundation of failure. If you were to walk into my bike shop right now, the first thing you would notice is the smell. It's a specific, heavy scent, a mixture of old rubber, chain lubricant, and cold steel. To most people, it smells like a workshop. To me, it smells like dignity. You would see me standing here with my filthy hands, wrestling with a bottom bracket that hasn't moved in 20 years. You would see the wheel hanging from the rafters, the rows of tools on the wall, and the clutter of a working life. You would see a blue-collar worker. You would see a man who has chosen a simple, analog life in a small town. And you wouldn't be wrong. On my LinkedIn profile, I'm a bicycle mechanic first, an entrepreneur second, and I have yet to make the update to content creator. Who knows what this work will be called in a few years anyway. Regardless, if you think this shop is just a business or YouTube is a career choice, you may be missing the point. And honestly, for a long time, I did too. It has recently become clear to me that this shop is a survival bunker, and YouTube is my periscope. I see now that I built all of this to protect myself from a realization I had 20 years ago, one that is only now beginning to dawn on the rest of the middle class. It is a truth that I believe will become critically clear to humanity in the next decade. Employment is just an illusion of security, and the tech giants are about to pull back the curtain. But before we get into all of that, a bit of backstory. It took me 5.5 years to get an English degree in creative writing because I liked working at the bike shop more than I liked going to class. Looking back, the writing was on the wall. I never wanted a real job, but the bright light of the American dream had blinded me. And in 2001, I landed a job as a technical writer at a cutting-edge photonics startup, but they put me to work as a research technician developing semiconductor diode lasers for fiber optic networks. I worked in a clean room, aligned optics at a micron-level precision, wore a lab coat, and spoke the language of physics with brilliant people, until the bubble burst. Next came corporate industrial sales. For 6 years, I wore a tie, drove a company car, and crisscrossed the Midwest selling high-purity toxic chemicals to pharmaceutical corporations and biotech startups. I sat in boardrooms with vice presidents and directors selling quality, safety, and reliability. It paid well, and it was the good life of expense accounts and golf, but I always felt like I was playing a part. I did everything the script demands. I got my degree, cut my hair, and got a good job. I bought into the fundamental contract of the 20th century, that if you trade your time and your loyalty to a corporation, they will in turn provide you with security and dignity. Still, no matter how hard I tried, I could never find my place in that world. And more importantly, neither could anyone else. I decided that if I couldn't earn it through merit, I'd take it with grit. Driven by a desire for autonomy and with more heart than sense, I leveraged myself to the hilt to purchase a wholesale distribution business of my own. I went all in, believing that with enough determination, I could build a life of my own. 18 months later, I was bankrupt, divorced, and God willing, sober. The collapse was total. It wasn't just financial, it was existential. Standing in the wreckage of my life, stripped of assets and dignity, I began my absolutely soul-sucking 3-year job search that finally ended after I was rejected by a local bike shop for a job as a bicycle mechanic. Failure taught me what success never had. The value of the wage is a capitalist myth. And so I became unemployed. Not because I lacked skills, but because I could no longer see the value proposition. Trading a non-renewable source like time for a small slice of the pie felt like a losing strategy. The only way forward for me was profit, not wages. Ownership, not permission. I needed a system where my labor built something I controlled, not equity for someone else. I rebuilt my life around bicycles because the bicycle is the ultimate machine of human efficiency and autonomy. As children, riding a bicycle is our first real taste of agency and freedom. You get out of it what you put in. But more importantly, it was my unfair advantage in a world that is rapidly vaporizing into the cloud. The physical world is one of the few places the algorithms cannot yet fully reach. I fortified my domain here, and I became a bike farmer, cultivating value with my own bare hands. Despite some happy accidents along the way, the past decade of living a post-labor lifestyle has been the most fulfilling part of my life. I'm no longer shackled to the capitalist merit system. I've reclaimed my agency, I'm proud of my work, and for the first time in my life, I feel free. Not too bad for a dirtball wrench who couldn't hack it in the boardroom. Recently, my most successful friends have told me I seem to have really figured it out, as if I'm some sort of outlier, which, I suppose, looking around, I am. But as I look at the horizon of 2027 and beyond, I realize that my professional past was not just a lesson in failure and resolve. It feels like a premonition. Part 2, the Great Displacement. We need to talk about what is happening to the labor economy in the age of AI. We appear to be standing on the precipice of a species-level event. The arrival of artificial general intelligence machines that possess the capacity to perform virtually any cognitive task a human can do, but faster, cheaper, and without fatigue, is imminent. This is not science fiction. The timelines have compressed. The smartest engineers in the world are telling us to prepare for this within the next few years. This is not the Industrial Revolution. When the steam engine arrived, it displaced muscle, but it increased the value of the human mind. It allowed us to move from the fields to the factories, and then from the factories into the offices. We became knowledge workers. We built an entire global economy on the premise that human intelligence is a scarce and valuable commodity. And that was the logic of the information age. He who has the talent wins. But we are crossing the threshold into the age of intelligence, where knowledge is infinite and talent is automated. We aren't just getting better at computers. The fundamental economic laws appear to be shifting from a scarcity of expertise to an abundance of productivity. Consider the trajectory of my own past lives. The laser technician, that role has been usurped by robotics capable of micron-level alignment driven by computer vision. The technical writer, large language models can already generate manuals, documentation, and technical copy in seconds. The chemical sales representative, AI agents are already beginning to negotiate supply chains, optimize logistics, and close contracts without human intervention. We are witnessing the systemic erosion of the middle class. The knowledge worker is an endangered species. If your primary economic value is your ability to process information, write code, organize data, or manage mid-level administrative tasks, you are standing on shaky ground. I look at my 4 children who are currently planning their futures, and I feel a profound responsibility to tell them the truth as I see it. The educational system has prepared them for the world of 2025, a world of credentials, resumes, and career paths. That's a world of dwindling value. Sending a child into the job market of the next decade with only a traditional degree and an expectation of guaranteed employment is a much riskier gamble. The concerning reality is that the value of cognitive human labor, in the traditional sense, risks approaching zero. If you sell your time for money, you're entering a competition with an entity that has infinite time, zero cost of living, and an unlimited capacity to learn. It is a race that's impossible to win. This is why I say that many of us are about to become unemployable, just as I had become a decade ago. It likely won't happen overnight. Many experts are saying it will happen slowly and then all at once. Wages will stagnate, hiring will freeze. The middle of the corporate ladder will simply dissolve. And so we are left with a question. If we cannot work for wages, how will we survive? Part 3, the fork in the road. We are facing a civilizational fork in the road. The path we choose today will determine the fate of humanity. One potential path, the one we seem to be sleepwalking into, is techno-feudalism. In this scenario, incentivized by our current socio-economic political systems, the ownership of the new means of production, the AI models, the data centers, the robotics, is concentrated in the hands of a microscopic elite. A handful of trillionaires and corporate sovereigns will own all of the abundance on Earth. They will control the surplus. The rest of us, the former accountants, the former coders, the former truck drivers, would be relegated to a permanent underclass under constant surveillance. We are at risk of becoming digital serfs, scraping by in a hyper-competitive gig economy, servicing the whims of the algorithm, dependent on the benevolence of overlords for our survival. This is a future where you might own nothing. This is a future of limited agency. This authoritarian dystopia is the easy path forward for those currently in power. But there is a second path that leads towards a post-scarcity renaissance. This is the future where we, the people, recognize that the job was never the point of human existence. The point was always freedom, and the job was merely the tool we used to achieve it. If the machines can solve the problem of productivity, if they generate abundance, it could leave us free to do the things that actually make us human. We could be free to create, to explore, to care for one another, to build communities, and to learn. We could stop working like cogs in a machine and finally use our time to build our own. But this future requires a radical restructuring of our social contract. It requires us to demand a new pro-social political reality. This is the one and final test of we the people. To manage this economic transition, we must focus on key policy solutions to decouple basic survival from employment, investing heavily in lifelong learning and upskilling programs to transition workers into human-centric fields requiring empathy and complex critical thinking, employing models like worker ownership to ensure the public shares in the productivity gains of automation. And immediately during the transition, we implement a safety net, like a sovereign wealth fund or a universal basic dividend, by reforming the tax code to recover the public investment in building this technology. Let's take a look at how these AI models were built. How does ChatGPT know how to write an essay? How does Midjourney know how to paint a sunset? How does the algorithm know how to diagnose a disease? It knows because it was trained on us, without our consent and without compensation. It was trained on the entire history of the internet. It was trained on the blogs you wrote, the photos you uploaded, the forums where you solved problems, the open source code you wrote for free. It was trained on the collective intelligence, creativity, and labor of the human species. In many ways, we are the silent investors in this technology. Our data is the fuel, and our attention is the spark. So when we talk about distributing the wealth generated by AI, we shouldn't view it as charity. I believe we should view it as compensation. To me, this represents a long overdue royalty check. We need a tax code that recognizes this reality. We need to tax the robots and regulate the algorithms, not to punish innovation, but to recapture the value that we helped create. At least for now, much like the COVID stimulus checks, this dividend may be the only way to keep the economy functioning. If nobody has a job, nobody has any money. And if nobody has any money, nobody can buy the products the robots are making. It all falls apart. Now look, I get it. Almost everyone I've spoken to about this immediately says the same thing. Yeah, right. Look into it though. Many experts agree the economic problems are solvable, but we cannot wait for the government to save us. The gears of democracy grind too slowly. The technology moves at lightning speed. By the time Congress convenes a committee to define AGI, the game could be over. So we must demand a democratic intervention from elected officials immediately, while we simultaneously begin building a personal solution. Part 4, the crisis of identity. We spend a lot of time talking about the economic shift. How will people pay their mortgages or buy groceries when the jobs go away? But losing a livelihood is only half the problem. A deeper, more sinister crisis is the potential loss of human dignity and identity. In our society, what do you do is often the first question we may ask a stranger. For many, this is how we locate ourselves in the hierarchy and how we understand our value to the tribe. When AI automates the execution of tasks, we risk facing a void of purpose. If a machine can do your job faster and cheaper, the external validation of being necessary evaporates. For many, work is the scaffolding of their life. Remove that structure, and things fall apart. When I rebuilt my life following my own existential professional crisis, I didn't do it by clinging to a job title. I did it by focusing on 3 core values: authenticity, creativity, and curiosity. These are the values that allowed me to build a life that the machine will struggle to emulate. These are the tools that bring me freedom and security. First, I embraced authenticity. This isn't just about being real. It's an acceptance of one's true self. It meant taking a hard inventory of my strengths and my weaknesses, my regrets and my passions, my beliefs and my doubts. I had to know exactly what my skills were, and more importantly, what my limitations are. In a world of synthetic perfection, becoming vulnerable to your own fuzzy human edges is paramount. Second, I leaned into curiosity. I didn't just look at the trends in the bicycle market. I became obsessed with the unsolved problems within it. I got curious about what it felt like to be a customer on the other side of the counter. I looked at what others were doing to find success and asked myself, where are the gaps? I went looking for the problems that only I could solve. I needed to leverage my unfair advantage to prop up my future. Finally, I gave myself permission to be creative. I started building a life instead of looking for a way to make a living. Creativity is different for everyone. Some people are artists, some are designers, some are builders. I'm more of a creator. I rebuild unique bicycles and make videos so other people can watch me do it. It's so simple, it's almost silly, but it's mine and I love it. I'm proud of where I am and how I got here. I stopped trying to fit into the existing machine and I built a small machine of my own. The result is that my livelihood is 100% unique to me. It is relatively independent, resilient, and largely unaffected by the wild fluctuations of the broader market. This is the position we need to be in to face the age of intelligence. Because I built this myself based on who I actually am, no corporate restructuring or socioeconomic collapse can easily take it away from me. Part 5, the exhibition. All right, I know what you're all probably thinking. That's great for you, but what does this all mean for me? And honestly, I'm asking myself these same questions. And the only way I know how to learn something is to take it apart and put it back together again. So, starting January 1st, 2026, I'm launching a public exhibition to do exactly that. For 52 weeks, I will release a weekly 12-minute video essay exploring work, labor, and society in the age of intelligence. I want to be very clear about what this is not. This is not another doom and gloom AI channel. I'm not interested in the sky is falling sensationalist rage bait slop that's currently flooding our feeds. I'm not here to scare you for clicks, and I'm certainly not here to sell you a course on how to get rich with ChatGPT. This is an authentic, messy attempt to answer the existential questions we are all facing today, one topic at a time. How will our daily lives actually change? What does it mean to be a human when we are no longer needed as workers? What can be done to protect our families? And importantly, what is the cost of all of this? Part 6, the ethical dilemma. In the interest of moral transparency, I must address the elephant in the room. I will be using AI tools to help research the topics, draft the scripts, edit the footage, and market the content. I'm not blind to the profound ethical hypocrisy of this project. I am a man who loves the natural world, worries about the climate, and who values human artistry. And yet, I'm proposing to use a technology that consumes vast amounts of energy, that scrapes the work of artists, and threatens the social fabric of the very society that I'm trying to defend. I'm not going to greenwash this. I understand there is a social cost to these tools, but I also believe in the concept of the oxygen mask. You have to put yours on before you can help the person next to you. I believe at some point we will all be forced to use the machine to free ourselves from the machine. I am using these tools to demonstrate they are the only lever powerful enough to pry open a space for independence in this new economy. We will need to use the master's tool if we want to rebuild the master's house. I don't love how this feels, so I'm setting some boundaries and leaving some outs. I'm limiting my work on this project to 1 hour per day and for only 1 year. I can quit at any point if I determine that the social cost is too great or if I lose my way. I'm not rushing into this blindly or out of desperation. I created the Instead of Working channel over a year ago because I felt that helping people become unemployable was my new unfair advantage. But I was early to the party, so the project stalled. The channel sat dormant until the paradigm shift of AI brought things into focus. We aren't choosing to leave the workforce. The workforce is about to leave us. I spent weeks reworking the concept from a lifestyle channel into a survival strategy, and then back again. What's left is more questions than answers, which for me is a great way to get started. In Mary Oliver's poem, Sometimes, she writes, "Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it." And I've always wanted to give that a shot, and now's my chance. Part 7, The Invitation. It took decades of cycling between real jobs and the bike shop before I finally loosened my grip and let go of the handlebars. Now, every time I walk into my shop, every time I fix a bike, every time I connect with my audience, I know I've made the right choice. I know that autonomy is worth the price of insecurity. I want to show how anyone can retain agency and find autonomy in their own lives. I want to show you how anyone can stop working for wages and start living for purpose. AI is poised to reconstitute every aspect of our professional lives, which I see as less of a threat and more of an opportunity. We must not let the system starve us out. We must not let the concentration of wealth force us into serfdom. We are going to use the tools that are ours. We are going to reclaim the wealth we have created, and we're going to build a world where we work because we want to, not because we have to. We will become the architects of the post-scarcity economy, not the victims of it. We will establish our role in society rather than allow corporations to demand we work for it. So consider this my invitation to follow along as I work through these ideas and fortify my own domain for the uncertain times that lie ahead. I'm Andy Q, and I'm busy living instead of working.